Sounds good.
How's it going?
You're doing great. Yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, of course, of course. Yeah, I think before we hit record, we were talking about skiing, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's winter right now, and record this, and yeah, what kind of skiing do you like to do?
I am as a kid I was a little bit crazier, but now I'm definitely much more subdued. I like some powder. I like a little bit of backcountry, but nothing crazy these days.
Nice. Not hitting the
Yeah.
parks or anything. Okay.
Yeah, no, definitely not. No, I'm telling you, you're too old for that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That's awesome. Well, cool. I guess for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, sure. So, Jamie Davidson, I'm one of the co-founders at Omni. I head up all our customer-facing stuff, and been in data for a long time. Was a practitioner, kind of starting my career. Was sort of a data scientist, product manager for a long time, and then most recently before Omni was VP product at Looker for 5 or 6 years or so too. So pre Google acquisition and post.
Wow, yeah, that was the big one in the
Yeah.
BI space. So
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, it's a ton of fun. Yeah, it was a great experience for sure.
That's super cool. And I guess you love BI so much you decided to start a
Yeah,
company around
yeah,
it.
exactly. Can't get enough. That's exactly right. No, I mean, it's just it's like a passionate space for me. Felt like it was still there's a lot left to be done still too.
So I guess what is left to be done in BI?
Yeah. I mean, so like super high level context, like, and this is definitely without a doubt talking our book, but like,
Yeah, go for
I
it.
spent 5 6 years at Looker, probably met with 1,000 or 1,500 customers when I was there. I firm believer in the value of a semantic model, defining things in a single place. It gives democratized access and change management on top of it, but saw effectively 100% of Looker customers using other tools alongside it to be able to go touch and feel the
Mm,
data to evolve the data model. Data model is great, but in particular in environments like that, it's slow to evolve, it's costly, it's effectively instantaneously stale, and so people were forced to use, BigQuery SQL Runner, they're forced to use Mode, they're forced to use Tableau to go and touch and feel the data in a really lightweight, quick way, and it was done in a disjoint fashion too. So it ends up with sort of, data teams become a bottleneck. They are forcing the organization to use other tools, and those tools are basically independent silos where the logic goes and sits, but basically never can come back into benefit the rest of the organization. It's effectively what we wanted to do was bridge that gap. How do we, believe in sort of a semantic model, but make it way easier to build it, make it much easier to do lightweight ad hoc analysis, kind of regardless of where the user is on a technical sophistication level. That was sort of the high level context for us too. I'm sure there's a bunch more left to do in data beyond that as well.
for sure. So for the audience, when you say data
Yeah,
model, are you referring to
yeah.
the like the LookML model that was in Looker or
Yeah. So like it's yes, it's sort of the logical construct that Looker had, which is like sort of a data relationships and business logic. We sort of firmly believe that there's value in sort of encoding those things and having a technical person build it. And it can be sort of progressively materialized in data warehouse, for cost performance or sort of you know to use outside of like the BI context as
Mhm.
well. But yeah, that was sort of we believe that foundation is super useful. We just found it to be really hard to build inside Looker. We found
Mm.
it to be many customers would have sort of stale data models. I remember actually working with a customer my last year there, where they estimated something like half of their model was pointing to tables or columns that no longer existed, too, because it was sort of a disjoint fashion where they're pointing to
Really?
a data warehouse that is changing, it's evolving over time, the business is changing, like the questions you're asking the business is changing, and so as a result, like the system needs to be much more fluid and sort of reactive.
Interesting. I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware that
Yeah.
Looker was often used in conjunction with other tools to sort of patch the huh. That gives me a lot to think about all day.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like it's you sort of end up seeing folks doing kind of operational standardized reporting inside Looker or inside sort of like the BI tool, and then doing other, basically going to other tools to, as your data models or as your database is changing, as the operations are changing, your application changing, your questions are changing too. The data you're materializing in Snowflake or BigQuery is often changing, and then in order to do the data modeling in the first place, you got to go touch and feel the data and look at it and see, like, understand the cardinality of the joins or understand what the
Yeah.
transformational logic might be. And so it ended up being, oftentimes folks using Tableau and Looker together
Mm.
inside an organization to be able to go do, like Tableau is great for like the lightweight visual discovery, and Looker was great for the operational stuff. And you sort of suddenly have these two disjoint siloed sort of
Yeah.
places where people have to go and figure it out.
Interesting. Yeah, and I can imagine that for customers, that sort of leads to a not ideal
Yeah.
state. For one, it just
Yeah.
seems expensive.
Yes.
Two,
Yes.
it's a lot of cognitive overhead. So,
That's right.
what
That's
was
right.
your solution to this?
Yeah, I mean, so the highest level that was sort of the core problem we wanted to solve, and it's basically how do we bring both of these paradigms in a single platform where we want to have very easy, lightweight, ad hoc analytics inside a workbook-like environment. If it's writing SQL, that's great. If it's sort of no code, low code, it's sort of easy visual discovery. If it's natural language, sort of whatever basic mechanism you want can be done inside a workbook. But then basically it's tied to and sort of built on top of a platform that enables sort of contribution to a semantic model.
Mm,
So there's sort of a foundation of, common, we call it our shared model, but basically ends up being like an organizational place where you define things. And to the extent you find that custom logic, that new definition of customer or new definition of fraud or, gross margin, whatever it might be, in a workbook, the data team can come back and say, hey, I want to promote this back. I want to share this with the rest of the organization too. In effect, doing data modeling sort of in the tool. So sort of facilitating that easy ad hoc experience too with a tie back into that platform.
interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Is
Yeah.
this what's been the response to this so far?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so far, folks like it a lot. I think, we're still early, so like it's
Yeah.
by no means have we haven't proven everything yet too, but the team has a lot of data experience. So we built a bunch of product in the, I guess, now almost 3 years since we started.
Yeah.
But folks seem to really resonate with it, and it's sort of interesting. The We've certainly got folks that are kind of coming from the Looker DBT world where they like data modeling in the first place. And basically they view this as, we love data modeling. This is sort of an evolution on top of data modeling where you can make it even easier to evolve it, easier to build it over time. And then sort of super exciting to us, we also have folks coming from kind of the opposite end of the spectrum where folks where, hey, they're like, data modeling is not worth it in the first place. Or like, I'm going to go, rip a bunch of code real quickly. SQL's amazing. I love it. And so they sort of say, "Oh, this is cool. Like, hey, I can go do that. I can go do this really quick, lightweight analysis." But actually, sort of almost as a byproduct of that, I actually start to standard. Like, as I have like one core analysis, and like as I do the permutations of it, like I can actually start to standardize it, and I can send it to my operations person or my finance person or my marketer or whomever it might be too, and start to get to some of the benefits of a data model in the first place. So it's been it's
Interesting.
still early days, but it's super fun so far.
What were some of the
Yeah.
arguments that
Yeah.
data modeling wasn't worth it?
It, it's hard. So data modeling, if you were starting like a data team of one or a company of one, creating sort of the abstractions that data modeling, enable may not be worth it. May be that, the upfront effort to go encode data relationships or encode data logic, for that team of one where it's maybe really fluid and changing really quickly and like is sort of the leverage you get from that model is not sort of worth the sort of upfront investment. I'd say it's mostly around arguments like that. Like, hey, we're moving too quickly. Most of the team is sort of technical, like too. We sort of like, I sort of think that once you get to the point where you sort of have a data person serving non-technical folks, I think the data model is wildly useful.
Mm,
And like I think there's sort of always argument to remove friction from the data modeling process. Like how do you go and define it? But I think a lot of that is ultimately it's like how do you define your business operations? It's how do you like what do you want to optimize for? What questions are you asking? Those are hard questions, period, that are worth asking, probably because you want to run your business as opposed to like data modeling is almost like the exhaust of, or it's sort of like it's like the byproduct of that thinking that you kind of get.
yeah, that is interesting. It is interesting too, because a lot of times when you're an analyst, you're working with, as you say, sort of exhaust, but the exhaust of application
Yeah.
data or third-party
Yes.
data, and then you have to think about,
Yeah.
okay, so how am I going to represent this in a way that's useful
Yeah.
from my own analysis if I'm an N of one team, but then
Hmm.
um, yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like I was just writing about this the other day.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it feels like data modeling, even upstream, when you're talking for engineers, it's also
Yeah.
you use similar things. It takes too much time to think about my data. I just need to
Yeah.
plop it into a database and make my
Yeah.
app work and stuff. So it's
Yeah, yeah, no, I think you definitely did that too, and then you sort of hear like the sort of frustrations, or I've done a startup before. We use Mongo as our backend, and it's great. It's great from the perspective of we didn't think ahead of time about a ton about our data model too, but then also too, as soon as we hit any scale or any concurrency, we ran into some problems where like what, hey, it turns out if we thought about like how do we want to index this data and what the usage patterns going to look like, we probably would have been better off putting it in a structured transactional database too with good indexes and the like. And so I think it's sort of similar. Like, hey, you're if you're going fast and loose, you're effectively taking on technical debt, and like you got to
yeah.
be implicit about that.
How do you recommend data teams starting with a team of
Yeah,
one and then moving up?
yeah,
How do you recommend that they balance that tension between moving fast and at the same time
yeah,
probably incurring debt as you go
yeah.
along?
Yeah, so I mean, at the highest level, that's really what we want to enable organizations to do is pick sort of, there's sort of we joked about it when we got started. There's sort of like the Looker spectrum where it's like, heavily locked down. You have to be a developer to go ahead and change LookML. And then there's sort of the free form maybe SQL based tool or something where like it's kind of Wild West. Anyone can go write anything. And I think that like when you're getting started, you want it to be really quick. You want it to be really agile because like honestly, speed of question asking is probably going to be highly correlated to the value that you're ultimately creating. But sort of as things start to get hardened, as things start to be common, as you start to have like a little bit more, more people in the organization or more frequency, that you're interacting with the data, or more commonly, viewed reports, you want to start to harden it. So like if you're looking at something like, I don't know, like we're a SaaS company, we look at our sales pipeline all the time. As I'm looking at my sales pipeline, it changes. It changes probably on like a monthly or quarterly basis, or what our operations are doing or what we're encoding things in Salesforce and the like. But it's still reasonably standardized. And so like if my head of sales wants to come in and look at, hey, how are we doing for this segment for this region? I want him to be able to come in and do that without having to go into SQL. I want him to be able to go
Yeah.
and reuse sort of the common primitives that we've got. And so it's sort of like the balance is like, hey, you want the tool to be an enabling sort of piece of technology, help you ask more questions, have a foundation where you're starting with a lot of commonality. But like as I don't know, the canonical example I always love to give is like, as you start to have deleted records inside Salesforce, which they still are ETLing, through five train or something, you probably want to remove those, and maybe like you want to remove those in a kind of canonical way. Maybe you want to put that in your DBT model, so like you're never really looking at those deleted records because like it's only in a blue moon where you'd actually need to go use those for kind of an analytical workload. So it's sort of hopefully progressive. I think it's like start with really lightweight things. As you find things that are reusable, you want to start to standardize them either inside a semantic model that's kind of a virtual layer or in directly in DBT, materializing it direct in the data warehouse and sort of managing that too.
Makes a lot of sense. One question I've always wanted to
Yeah.
ask somebody at Looker, and you get to be
Yeah,
the
yeah,
person I
yeah.
get to ask,
Yeah,
is, or
sure, totally.
and people working with semantic layers in general is, um, on one spectrum, I
Yeah.
think that there's the kind of the orthodoxy of, say, Kimball
Yep.
and established modeling methods for analytics. And
Yep.
on the other hand, there's sort of the fast and loose will make,
Yeah.
at some extreme, maybe a DBT model for every question that needs to be asked or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
How do you view this spectrum of kind of orthodoxy versus more ad hoc?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting question. Like I think it also probably comes kind of progressively, here
Mm,
too. I think it's sort of like the designing the perfect Kimball model to answer any potential question the organization ever is going to have to at for the world as it is exactly today or for the world that's in the future is it's a hard task. I think in general I tend to be kind of ruthlessly pragmatic about these things. It's like, hey, let's solve for the problems that we have today too, and in a way that's hopefully performant and reusable with the right levels of abstraction so that you can go in and change definitions in a simple enough way to and have it be reflected everywhere. Changing gross margin to better reflect like what, the sales tax that you started to take, or I don't know, but maybe it's
Yeah.
a bad example. I'm definitely not a finance or accountant. But I tend to think of it as like, hey, doing as much modeling basically as it serves the organization. But like, I
Hmm.
think in general, needs to solve a problem, especially I think, today maybe relative to, 5 years ago, I think data teams were super, uh, robust. They had lots of people, they had lots of
Hmm.
tooling, and they've sort of increasingly become very focused on like how do we drive business ROI and the like. And so it's less about designing the perfect model with like the best point solutions for like 15 different point solutions, across
Yeah.
the data stack. And now it's more like, hey, how do we make sure we're solving the business problems that the organization has too, and do it in a way where we create a ton of leverage. And I think the data model ends up being a lot of that leverage. Actually, it turns out like
Hmm.
that's how data people can take their logic or their technical understanding and their business savvy and basically apply it so that the rest of the like the salesperson, the operations person, the customer support person can go and ask a bunch of questions and drive their business value.
Right. That seems like that is what it's about at the end of the day is
Yeah,
the business users being able to use the data to drive
definitely.
whatever outcomes they need. It's interesting when I talk to especially data modeling. I hate to use the word purists,
Yeah,
but more orthodoxy, right? It's like
yeah, yeah,
it's always like, well, if you're not doing it according to X, Y, or Z way, then it's
yeah,
complete crap, and so are you as a person, actually. I'm just kidding,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
but that's
yeah,
almost the impression I get, and right. But at the end of the
yeah,
day, I don't think any end user really asks, well, is this a Kimball store scheme? I can see the
yeah,
benefit. And I was writing about. I'm actually in the middle of writing about this right now, but I feel like
yeah.
the benefit of using something like Kimball would be if you're on a data team that you have a standard vocabulary for
Yes,
talking about the data, right? If you say the word fact, this hopefully means
yes,
what
yes,
it means in Kimball and dimensions and conform dimensions and so forth. And
yeah,
so that could help from a performance standpoint internally with the
yeah,
team. But for the end user, I mean, ideally they want to get the data they need and it's correct, or at
yeah,
least believable. As I think Bill Inman says, it's not really correct data, but
yeah.
it's at least believably
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
I think that's right, and I think it's like as data teams are larger, so we see as sort of you go into larger and larger enterprises too, where you maybe have like standardized platform teams where they're building kind of canonical things that are being reused by many departments or by many different functions. I think it is worthwhile. It's sort of not premature optimization. Then it's like, hey, let's like it's worth it to get the data model right because to be used many times. We're going to create a ton of leverage from it, so we want to
yeah,
be able to have common like best practices, sort of a center of excellence and the like. When you're at maybe like a smaller company or like a more a company that's changing faster, whether it's like early stage startup or something, there you might want to not like over engineering or prematurely optimizing kind of is potentially like just uh uh not worth it ultimately
yeah.
to sort of do that sort of level of sophistication or something.
Hmm. What's it like? You mentioned something else I think is interesting I'd like to
Yeah,
talk about, which is
yeah,
data teams 5 years ago to data teams today.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What have you seen and what are you seeing?
It's funny. Like so when Looker got started, it was kind of the start of the modern day stack, or like sort of similar timing, where it's sort of like the common stack was call it Fivetrans, Snowflake, and Looker, and that was sort of
Yeah.
like the three-legged stool or something. And then over time, we saw more and more sort of point solutions pop up where there's smaller tooling, that were like creating a ton of value but like new categories or like I remember talking with a company I'm forgetting who when we got started with Omni and it was a 100 or 200 person startup and they had 15 different data vendors that they were working with too like from multiple different ETL tools doing data modeling and they had a data warehouse and maybe like multiple different sort of databases designed for sort of slightly different sort of use cases and like it feels like those days are over where folks are
Mm,
not, it's not just about individual point solutions, even if they're like marginally better than the platform sort of solution. It's about like, hey, how do we drive as much leverage as we possibly can? Like we've seen a bunch of folks kind of like going from those lookers and tableaus and consolidating actually down and like, hey, let's replace these siloed tools too with a platform that can sort of satisfy those use cases, or going from data teams that were like large percentages of the org in terms of people, or like you had dedicated people for each one of these vendors that you're using, and instead you have a little bit more generalists and people that are really creating a ton of value. So it seems like there's a increased focus on efficiency, increased focus on sort of like ease of use and sort of even consolidation. It feels like too, kind of across that tool space.
Yeah. And what's that like then as a
Yeah,
BI company, as a BI
yeah,
vendor in terms of
yeah,
um selling in? Because
yeah,
they're like, well, but we're not just another tool, unlike the other
yeah.
15 tools you just
Yeah.
bought. I mean, what's
Yeah, exactly. I'd say like it cuts both ways. So there's
yeah.
it's a very noisy space, and there's a ton of different players, a bunch of different point solutions with sort of slightly different points of view. So like from that perspective, I think like the messaging is hard, honestly, and like getting the foot in the door is kind of hard, and
Mm,
understanding like people are too busy to try and go and understand the differences between all these tools, understandably
right.
so. The sort of the flip side is uh, people are frustrated with the price of a lot of these tools, and they're
Yeah.
frustrated with like the sprawl that they've seen in sort of the tooling. And so like managing 15 relationships alone is painful. Managing 15 different siloed sort of environments, or like in non or like marginally connected environments is expensive and painful, and the like too. And so coming in with a message of, hey, we are a new tool. We seek to do a lot of what a lot of these different tools do. Actually,
Mhm.
we want to be the best of what Looker does from a governance perspective. We want to be the best of what Tableau does from a visual discovery perspective. Best of what Mode did from SQL, or best of what ThoughtSpot does from natural language, or Excel does from like a easy. Like we sort of that the name was Omni. Like all of your data use cases for all your people is sort of the idea, but
Oh.
like the they're like the consolidation story, I think, is actually something where like people are finding some resonance, and like it's like, hey,
Mm.
like can we replace the like two or three tools that we're using for analytics that are all kind of overlapping, and bring them into a single platform where maybe even they're sort of mutually beneficial use cases that actually help each other on the platform. So that part's been good, but like it's definitely, I'd say the messaging, sort of the market is definitely crowded.
Interesting. And what's it like from working with other partners these days versus
Yeah,
back in the
yeah.
day?
Yeah, on that front, like we are very very focused on working with partners. And we want to basically make the uh, sort of like the whole end-to-end problem, we think, is sort of part of what we want to solve for you. So
Mm.
like that's like ultimately creating value from your data. Really, it's like making decisions based on the data, based on insights you get from it. And that really, BI is never going to be the be all end all there. You always have data storage, data processing, and like the data warehouse ultimately, and so working with Snowflake is a close partner and investor in us. We're also got Google Ventures investor in us too. BigQuery is definitely a big partner as well. There we want to basically very tightly couple, and we sort of have done a bunch of things to make it much easier to integrate with the data warehouse. Sort of going
Yeah.
going forward, sort of starting with a data warehouse native sort of a approach. We also want to partner sort of kind of across the board. So we've got a really tight partnership with DBT, for example, where you
Yep.
sort of have bi-directional syncing of metadata and content. So you can generate, models from Omni and push them into DBT and run them inside your DBT cloud, and manage your orchestration of your DAG in a more complex way. We also want to, and it's something we're sort of probably pushing on more this year, stuff that's kind of upstream of us. So data catalogs and like we've had a bunch of customers now ask
Yeah.
us to integrate with some of the observability tools, some of the cataloging tools too, where they're sort of, hey, we want to look at our dashboards, we want to understand the lineage and sort of the full context, and that makes a ton of sense too. We've started to develop APIs there, but like don't have yet full integrations with partners, but like are super excited about that also.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
actually just having lunch with somebody today who worked
yeah,
at what is it? One of the big data vendors, and he said that
yeah,
the
yeah,
Looker at the time was like the big I think the biggest
yeah,
vendor they had back then. So
yeah.
if partnerships are so key. I think
Oh,
for the
totally.
audience, it's one of these things where you don't really see the behind the scenes stuff,
Yeah.
but it's real.
Absolutely. And like, we sort of, we strictly, we don't work unless you have a database, period, full stop. Like if you don't have a database, like we can't really help you. And so like, it's just a super natural thing for us to want to go partner with all these databases and make it so that, we kind of uniquely show off the best of Snowflake or ClickHouse or MotherDuck
Yeah,
or BigQuery. And, sort of, I think we've had a ton of innovation on the infrastructure side, which is awesome. And we want to sort of make sure you can take advantage of it in sort of modern tooling too.
for sure. And you mentioned natural language, and I guess this kind of brings us to
Yeah.
the next big thing. It's happened concurrently with
Yeah.
sort of the the modern data stack and whatever we want to call it now,
Definitely.
the stack, but
The stack, yeah.
AI's
Yeah. Yes.
the thing. What are
Very
your
much
thoughts?
so.
What are your thoughts on how AI is impacting the entire I don't know, data universe at this point?
Yeah, so at the very least, everyone is wildly excited about it, and I am too. I think that it's got like sort of transformative potential to remove friction, in particular, sort of enabling, you know, semi-technical and non-technical folks to sort of have superpowers that like I use it, I use Copilot every day. I use ChatGPT nonstop. Like I am blown away by it. I think the sort of we had a wave of sort of text to SQL. Like honestly, I feel like I saw probably 40 different companies doing stuff sort of along those lines. I think that people realize, that that's sort of hard, and I think there's a couple of different reasons why the data domain is in particular hard. Data is a high precision problem. Like if I ask you how much revenue did we have last quarter, there is a single answer. It's not like up to interpretation. Hallucinations are not acceptable. And I think also beyond that, it's a highly contextual problem. Like what's the definition of revenue? What's the definition of quarter? These things that like seem trivial and are like kind of commonly understood actually have a precise definition and like kind of can't deviate from it. The other example I like to give is uh, you know like a very like one of our customers like e-commerce company too, and their marketing team had like how many users do we have, and that like turns out that's also I mean Facebook's had problems with the SEC with the definition of this, but like it is a nuanced. It's like is that count star of users in the users table? Is that count distinctive users in your events table? Is that a count distinctive users on transactions? And like what's a transaction? So it certainly becomes a nuanced thing. So our sort of firm belief is natural language is a really it's like a great interface for semi-technical, non-technical folks to engage with data, but it has to be integrated into the core BI experience. And we sort of
Mhm.
firmly believe too, this is an area where having a semantic model is incredibly important. You need to have a sort of a predefined vocabulary that the semi-technical, non-technical user can appreciate and understand in the context of sort of the analytical environment to be able to go kind of constrain the input space and constrain the output space of what the these sort of generative AI LLMs are going to give you too. But highest level, like super excited about it too. But I think it has to be thoughtfully integrated into the experience. It's not like a if a user asks like how much revenue do I have too, I can't give them a SQL query. That they definitely can't appreciate that. I can't give them a number either because they don't know how to interpret that number or ask the next question or understand what that number is even representing.
Mm, that's fair. Yeah, and you're right. There was, I think, a giant interest at first with the Texas sequel,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
my friend Juan Cicada over at Data.World, he did some good
yeah,
research on basically the hallucinations, and it
yeah,
was pretty bad actually. Like I think,
yeah,
at least in the study that he did, it was on insurance data, but it was
yeah,
like, um, yeah, without a knowledge graph, for instance, you're seeing
yeah.
basically hallucination rates at like, or accuracy rates of about 10-15%, which is
Yes,
not
I think that's right.
amazing.
Yeah,
And
yes,
it's,
yeah. Yeah,
so.
maybe worse than not anything, actually, honestly. Like it's sort of it's a scary world where if a user feels like that's the right answer, that's scary, actually.
Oh yeah. Plus, I mean, if people start, I mean, you can see what happens. Obviously, if people get
Yeah.
very strange results, then suddenly they can say, "Well, this whole thing sucks, and we're not using it."
Yes.
So,
Yes.
and
Yes.
then analytics, as you say, it's a high precision thing. If you get one answer wrong, I mean,
Yeah.
that could sink the entire trust of whatever else you're
Yes.
trying to do. I've seen it happen. I don't even know how many times,
Yes.
a lot, right? So,
Yes. Absolutely. Even with like intelligent analysts with context for the business and stuff too, it's hard. So like you have to really. we sort of firmly believe like it needs to be human in the loop. It needs to be something where it's like, 'cause I do think that there's potential to dramatically remove friction, but it
Yeah.
has to be thoughtfully integrated in a way where it builds trust as opposed to erodes.
What do you think are the highest friction points right now that AI can
Yeah.
help with?
So, one feature, it's like a small feature that we built that like I've been blown away by how much usage we've got. So we've got basically direct one-to-one parity with Excel functions. So like most BI tools have
Mm.
like a post-processing language, like a Looker had a we called it the Looker expression language. Like Tableau's got it, Power BI's got it. Like everyone has these post-processing languages to do like lighter weight things, like hey, can I go do an offset or okay, and it's custom language that's proprietary that you have to go and learn. And so we instead, integrated or basically replicated Excel functions directly. And it turns out that LLMs are incredible at writing Excel. It's been around for, I don't know, decades. There's a, infinite corpus of content on it too. So LLMs are really good at it. So passing exclusively metadata about like a result set or a table, we pass that to the LLM, and the LLM will generate basically Excel function for a user. So you can sort of go from natural language, say something like kind of crazy things like, hey, the example I always like to demo is like, say you have a bunch of user emails, like parse the domain from this email, and the LLM will write some Excel function that basically finds the gmail.com or something for it, which is sort of mind blowing when you first see it. It's really pretty cool. It's like things like that where it's like, how do we make it like easier to do more sophisticated things, easier to do higher. I can write some Excel functions. I can read what the LLM writes, but I'm not an Excel. Like I'm not. I don't know. All of the string, concatenation or like string splitting, functions that Excel can do, and like it's it ends up being like a sort of a high value place you can sort of integrate with it. That's like one example. I think that it's probably a bunch of other stuff too. It's kind of like
Yeah.
almost everywhere, honestly. Can you help with describing data sets and like describing what's happening in the chart, or give me prompts for questions I can ask, next questions I can ask. Those types of things I think are super interesting. We're just sort of starting to see people build out some functionality there.
That's really fascinating. And it got me thinking about something where it seems
Yeah,
like
yeah,
what the world you're describing really is it almost seems like it could be a BI 2.0 type of world
yeah,
where
yeah,
it's more of a back end for analytics. Because you mentioned
yeah,
Excel. I think a lot of,
yeah,
especially 5 years ago, whatever, there was this superiority complex against Excel. Like if you're using Excel,
yeah,
like you may as well
yeah,
talk to me.
yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, business users always say, well, can I export the report to Excel?
Yes, that's exactly right. That's where BI all BI goes, anyways. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But what you described is sort of it's just things
yeah,
happen behind the scenes. You made it a lot easier for somebody to do things in Excel.
yeah,
And I'm like, well,
yeah,
is there a world where, the world, I think the BI world is, I grew up and probably you grew up, is like you go to the BI tool, you interface in the BI tool, and that's where you do your BI. But it seems like there's
yeah.
also a world where that sort of magically happens behind the scenes. You can interface with it
Yes.
however you want. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Yeah, we have like another example. We've got an embedded product, so like our customers using our dashboards and their
Mm.
products to to their customers and stuff too. And we've got natural language query that goes through our semantic model, but like is an example. We've got a travel company that uses us basically to report to their hotel managers. So like not technical folks, people that are like experts in running their business, like running their hotels, but like maybe don't know what a database is and certainly don't know what
Hmm.
SQL is. And we built this natural language querier that basically, sort of on top of this kind of constrained, vocabulary that they've created, this knowledge graph or the semantic model that they've got, where the hotel people can come in and say, "Hey, show me, my, daily room rate for these hotels compared to last period or compared to last year or whatever it is," and like ends up being a supernatural interface where like the technology can help them. You don't want them redefining it. You don't want it to write SQL. Like it shouldn't redefine what like the daily room rate is. Maybe that's a complex thing that like the data person should really be engaged with. But like, can they reference those things? Probably actually. Like, and there's probably a need. Like maybe they don't know exactly how to construct that query or look at it over time. They don't know how to use the interface. Maybe it can make it easier for them.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. But I think it's like I am cautiously optimistic. I do think that folks are altogether too often looking for a silver, sort of a silver bullet. Like they're looking for like, kind of like magic. I love maybe it's the XKCD, like it's like star from this perfect table that doesn't exist, or something. Like it's like
Yeah.
it's kind of people want magic, of course. They want a magic wand and like, it solves my problems. I think it's nuance. I think it's hard. Often they're business problems. Like it's like they're business questions. Like how do you define these things and what your operations are?
Mm,
Like what these things, can be, should be nuanced. It should be hard to do and thoughtful. And you want to understand the, various interpretations of, of these definitions. But I do think it's possible to kind of like hopefully speed up the interaction, make these sort of the feedback loops faster and easier and the
hmm.
like.
That's a good point about feedback loops because it feels like when the
Yeah.
feedback loop is tight and it's quick,
Yeah.
you resolve a
Yes.
lot of errors very quickly and you get more
Yes.
value.
Yes.
If you wait, who knows what happens.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
I honestly, I feel like the when we integrate the Excel functions, so basically we have these Excel functions and we actually will translate them to SQL. We run against Snowflake and the like. But when we first integrated with it, I'd say the best part about it was you saw it immediately. I'd write whatever column A divided by column B or something and be like, oh shoot, I got it reversed. I meant column B divided by column A. I can't tell you how many times I've done that. Like it is like that instantaneous response time that makes it so that you can ask those questions faster and have more intuitive sort of understanding of what you're doing.
Yeah. You mentioned something
Yeah.
just a second ago where it was uh, basically simplifying the use cases for business users. What role do you think data
Yeah.
literacy has in a world where people can ask questions almost instantaneously of their data?
I mean, I hope it's even more important, honestly. And like, it's ultimately what, like my sort of my bull case for sort of data teams in general is like suddenly now data is going to be infused everywhere and like it's if it's lower friction to access it, like it should be in Slack, it should be on your like whatever on your phone, on your on any device that you basically can engage with. You should be able to, like, the salesperson who's like walking into a store he's trying to sell to can ask, wait, tell me all the context about all the similar customers like this person and what's the best way for me to sell to them. Like, it feels like uh by removing friction, we're going to increase the value of those core assets. And data teams need to spend more time defining these core ontologies or defining these core vocabularies and making it so that it's going to be easy for humans and also for the LLMs, which are consuming it through probably very similar interfaces now.
Yeah.
To do this, so like my guess is it's actually ever more important actually to have your data. Like, I mean, like no business has their data in a clean spot. Like no one really is like I think sort of it's funny, like we were talking about the Kimball versus sort of like a fast and loose data model. I feel like I've very rarely seen really really well modeled data. I feel like maybe people start out with well modeled data and suddenly, like, just through like sort of the natural evolution of a business, like it's suddenly stale and like you got like weird, warts bolted onto it. And like it's never it never stays clean. I think that the sort of increased, use cases that data actually can be inserted into too may actually encourage more. And like I kind of hope
Mm.
it'll be like it's ever more important to use data. It's ever more important to have clean data or like interpretable data and understandable data too. But yeah, I don't know. I'm an optimist. I'm like a you probably don't start a company if you're not a hopeless naive in some way or something like that.
That is true. You definitely have to push through. Actually, on that note, walk me through
Yeah,
that. Like,
yeah, yeah,
what's it like going from working at a
yeah,
company to a very successful one that had a great exit
yeah.
to doing a startup?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've loved it so far. It was sort of one of these like amazing. We like Looker sold to Google basically right before COVID happened. So like I think literally we like were onboarded into Google the week before shelter in place. So like I got my laptop on Wednesday and then Monday I think shelter in place happened in San Francisco. And it's weird time for everyone, I'm sure too. But like it was not a bad time to be a part of one of the biggest companies in the world when like the world sort of seems to be melting down is a positive thing. And like I had a really I had like a lot of that experience was really positive and like it's fascinating to learn about Google Cloud. I think the other side of it is Google's a much bigger business than Looker is, and it's and Looker even still was a big business and was starting to slow down naturally because you've got a huge customer base and like it's harder to make incremental changes and like you have a big established product too. It's harder to iterate on top of it, and so the it was sort of a, interesting time where, about 2 years into the acquisition, we started to have these ideas and like realize that maybe we'd be better off doing it outside. And like, man, it's been so fun. We've gone just so fast. There's a core of us, we're kind of a handful of longtime Looker engineers, a couple product people, some designers and stuff, and then my co-founder too came from Stitch Data, like the ETL company. And we've got a kind of cohort of a bunch of Stitch engineers too. But like, a bunch of people with a ton of experience in data that like had a pretty strong view about what we want to go do. And then like kind of unfettered, we could free reign, we could kind of go build as much as we can, and like it's up to us to go
Mhm.
do it. So that part has been just so like the team is amazing. It's fun. I mean, I love data. So like it's
Yeah.
fun to go build and solve problems. Like it's been really cool.
Well, it totally is. And I
Yeah.
remember actually the first time I visited the Looker office
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
in 2014, I think it was,
Yeah.
in Santa Cruz. I think it was
Yeah.
Santa Cruz, yeah. And it just had this really fun vibe. Because I think
Definitely.
it was in Santa Cruz, it's a bit far off from the valley where
Definitely.
it was.
Definitely.
It's just it had a really cool yeah, I guess it had just energy to it. And then I'd go back there.
Yeah.
The company I was with were partners with Looker, so
Yeah.
I visited periodically, but it just yeah, it was a great place to work. And the people there really
Yeah.
felt like everyone was about data, everyone was having fun. And the customer service
Totally.
people there I felt were just
Oh,
like some of the
yeah.
most top-notch data people I think I'd ever seen in
Yeah.
my life.
100%. That's absolutely right. No, I totally agree. Yeah, we've got a bunch of them now at Omni as
Good.
well too. And
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, and I think too, like, I mean, kudos to Lloyd, as the founder at Looker. He built an amazing culture. Like, I absolutely loved. As an early customer, I loved it. Then became a full-time employee. Absolutely loved. Like, he did an awesome job. It was a ton of fun.
Are there some parts of that that you're trying to emulate over at Omni?
I mean, very much so. Like I sort of I'd say like the extreme customer focus is without doubt the
Mm.
same, and like we want to take it, almost even further, where it's very high touch sort of customer support motion, like we do, Slack channels. We've got like a sort of
Cool.
we're very much inspired by that core Looker experience. I think that data's hard. Like honestly, my most frequent question I get, as more of a product guy, it's like still like, okay, great, I got Omni. Like now what? Now how do I be data driven? Like how do I change
Mm.
my business? And it's like, you know what? These things are all. It ends up being very consultative. A lot of our customers uh, can kind of, we hope to build good community and sort of like have folks helping each other out too, because like they're all, they're in wildly different spaces, not competitive at all. But like honestly too, a lot of these businesses have very similar problems. It's like,
Yeah.
there's like technology problems, there's people and process questions and stuff. And so like, how do we help build best practices, and how do we help, our customers share amongst themselves and sort of share
Mm.
various solutions and stuff. So it's yeah, I mean, very much inspired by Looker from like a, from like kind of customer orientation, extreme customer focus perspective too, and a lot of the sort of core problems that we want to solve. Or I think we think of ourselves as kind of like a logical successor to some of the Looker philosophy at least.
That's super cool. That makes my day because it
Yeah,
was something where
yeah,
when Google bought
yeah,
Looker, that was the one thing where when they let go of the customer service, I was like,
yeah.
that's I was like, you guys
That was
made
a
the biggest
bummer.
mistake ever. Like that
It
was
was crazy, and like it was like the highest like promoter, net promoter score of anything ever. Like it was, it was maybe it's just not the Google way, and like not scalable to sort of Google's
it's
perspective too. But like it killed me. I loved our the Department of Customer Love. I loved it.
they're so
So
good.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and it's interesting because I feel like I run these data
yeah,
therapy sessions where I just get people
yeah, yeah.
together and we just talk about whatever's on
I
their
love
mind. But I
all of
feel
that.
like yeah, but people I feel like they want others to talk to, right? And so
Yeah,
the Department of Customer Love or whatever, but or this
yeah,
community that you're building with the
yeah,
customers, it's like
yeah,
the data is one of these things too, where you can read the instruction books, you can read the manuals all day, but a
yeah.
lot of it is just talking to other practitioners.
Yes, yes,
And I think also having that feeling that you're not alone in this world with whatever it is
yeah.
you're dealing with. So
No, totally. Because like it ends up being like you're, a data team of one or two people in like an org of 500 or something like that. Like
yeah,
you don't have the peers to bounce the ideas off of, just because like that's the way that sort of the sort of the function works. I totally agree. I love data therapy. That's the best way to frame it. It's awesome.
oh yeah, yeah, it happens every week. I do it
Yeah,
for US and Europe, and then US and
yeah,
Asia Pacific because time
Oh, that's
zones and
awesome.
stuff. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
always super
totally.
well attended, and you'd be surprised.
Oh,
It's a lot of interesting people in the industry just show up
yeah,
randomly, and it's like it's cool, but everyone's there to support and
I love
um,
that.
yeah,
I feel like
and a lot. Was
data
it?
people are just so fun too. Like it's like they're technical enough to do kind of almost anything too. They're business savvy enough to understand what's important. Like they end up being like
Yeah.
kind of this interesting intersection of like they can drive real change in businesses. Like that's awesome. Like a fun spot to be.
Oh, it is. It's super fun. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, what so
Yeah.
what are you excited about over the next couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, like a bunch of different stuff. I think that we will continue to see AI play out and like remove friction in sort of the end experience too. And I think that hopefully it's thoughtfully integrated into the user experience. And I think we'll get there. We'll see kind of material changes to product. I think that uh, honestly, I think we are in a new wave of analytics. So like my hope is
Mm,
how do we make it so that it's both agile and governed, and like how does that uh, evolve with an organization, or sort of how does it best facilitate kind of workflows and process, but like the technology is an enabler, not like a constraint on it. So like that's definitely a core piece. I think we're also seeing some cool stuff with uh, data platforms. Like I think we're super excited about stuff Snowflake's doing and some of their AI work too. I'm
mhm.
excited about what Databricks is doing kind of across the board. I think that there's a bunch of really interesting sort of data vendors. I was listening to your podcast with Estuary. I love what they're doing. They're super
Yeah.
interesting. Like I think there's cool new database technologies like ClickHouse and Mother Duck that I'm personally excited about too. And
Yeah.
sort of they're like use cases that they seem to be tailored for in a that absolutely enormous market. Like these use cases are pretty big actually too, even if they're not 100% of sort of data warehouse workload. So I feel like I'm an eternal optimist. I'm excited for sort of everything kind of on the sun, like both from like end user experience perspective, from like the infrastructure perspective, and sort of how it meets in the middle.
What are your thoughts on Iceberg
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
I guess the looming proliferation of open table formats?
I think it's super interesting. And like there's clear demand for kind of lower cost alternatives for like less like or lower value data warehouse workloads or analytical workloads that should be cheaper. And like it's like, hey, I've got all of my historical data. I don't want to keep it hot inside Snowflake and pay an arm and a leg for a giant warehouse. I instead want to have it be sort of maybe more of like a data lake kind of a framework. And to the extent that Iceberg enables that, that's good. I also worry though, I kind of get some flashbacks to kind of the Hadoop world where it's sort of the complexity. Maybe this is going to go away, and this may be just sort of a natural technology thing where like, hey, you get like technical innovation, and then sort of over time people smooth it over, make it easier, more abstract to engage with. But I do get a little bit of, hey, this is like a new HDFS Hadoop kind of, and you have to hire a small army of engineers to go and manage this, and like it'll be cheaper. I swear, but like don't think about total cost of ownership of like your full data team. Just think about it. It's like I don't know. I get worried about that a little bit, but my hope, and I'm generally just sort of an optimist. Like my hope is these open frameworks or open platforms too are adopted by the entire industry, and like Snowflake and BigQuery and Databricks and all of these vendors adopt them, and it's better for all the consumers. It's better because like it's in a more interoperable. It's better for cheaper workloads, or sort of gives you more choice. But yeah, it still feels early. It still feels early, even
Still
though
feels
it's the
early.
clear factor. Yeah, the
Yeah.
clear winner. Yeah,
Yeah, it still feels early for sure. You
yeah,
can't tell if it's going to be yeah, I definitely get the same vibes. Yeah,
yeah,
posted somebody's article about that where
yeah,
definitely feel like Hadoop. Then at the same time, it's maybe it's a battle of the query engines. Everybody becomes a
yes,
query engine, or you go to the
yeah,
platforms you want specialized storage and whatnot. Then on the other hand, you have DuckDB and so forth, which
yeah,
is the extreme opposite of whatever
yeah. Totally. Yeah,
large
exactly,
workloads. Yeah.
exactly.
Are you guys doing anything with
I th
DuckDB?
Yeah, we are. I love DuckDB. So we use DuckDB. Basically, we wrap it in WASM, run it in the browser for basically we call it our requeryable cache. So like,
Oh,
uh, we connect to data warehouse. We'll query directly, but then we'll also sort of reuse data sets to make it faster, cheaper for the end customer. So I have been blown away by DuckDB. It's awesome, and like just like I think there's just a ton of technical innovation that's happening. Like it's
so
really
much.
like Yeah, it's the technology is great. Like I'm super excited about it. I think what Mother Duck's doing too is super exciting.
Oh
Also,
yeah.
it like it resonates with me these smaller data workloads and sort of like hybrid execution, like sort of on my laptop versus on the sort of some distributed system in the cloud or something like that too. It feels like that can be really pretty interesting too. So like that's I'm curious to see how that evolves. It's still early, but yeah,
Yeah, it is. I'm super excited for Mother Duck too. I think that they're doing it
yeah,
right too. I don't think they're trying to go
yeah,
in this bombastic like let's blow it out to everybody. I think
definitely.
they're taking very methodical steps.
100%.
It's like the team has been here before and has done
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Maybe we've done this. Maybe they've done this once or twice. That's exactly right. No, I love it. No, they're super exciting. So yeah, no, it feels like we're getting a bunch more sort of tailor specific, you basically can pick, like if you've got giant data sets that aren't super hot, like hey, maybe you get these data lake frameworks, you've got sort of classic data warehousing where Snowflake is incredible, and like you've got sort of smaller data sets where maybe Mother Duck could
Yeah.
be sort of a cost performance improvement, and I'm sure it's going to push everyone to innovate, and like all the vendors are going to compete in a good way for the end customer, and so yeah,
Yeah.
we love it all.
Yeah. It's an exciting time to be a customer, I think, right now. So if
Yes,
you
I
it's
I think
just
so too.
yeah,
I think so
definitely.
too.
Well, awesome. Got
Yeah.
any plans
Yeah.
this winter?
Nothing too crazy. Yeah, just kind of keeping one foot in front of the other. Got to build a great experience. Got to build a great
Yeah.
customer sort of experience. Got to build good product. That's the focus though.
Yeah. Well, it's easier said. It's a lot of work, actually, what you
That's
just described.
that's exactly right. And it's kind of a continuous thing. I gotta love it. Like yeah, it's about every interaction. It's about every feature and like smoothing it over for everyone. But yeah, no, it's a ton of fun though. And definitely the team is amazing. So that makes it so much easier.
Yeah, it's awesome. It is a great team too. Whenever I run into them
Yeah.
at conferences,
Yeah.
everyone's super
Yeah.
polite. Yeah, yeah. I walk past a lot of booths. I always stop by Omni and just go hang out for a while. So
Yeah.
it's
Gotta love it. Yeah, exactly. Just look for the pink, you'll find us. That's exactly right. We love
very
it.
easy to see. Yeah.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Jamie,
Awesome.
thanks for the
Yeah.
great chat, man. So
Yeah. No, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it. This is awesome.
yeah, and if you're in Utah, hit me up. We'll go skiing or snowboarding, whatever. So
Yeah, absolutely. I will without a doubt do that. I'm hoping to be out there in a month or something. So I'll definitely shoot you a note.
sounds great. All right, take care.
Awesome.
Bye.
Cool. Thanks so
Yeah,
much.
thanks.